All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting for October 16th, 2014. We have a quorum.
2024.
What did it say? 14?
2014.
At least they didn't say 1914. Thank you.
Sure.
So we have on our agenda tonight news and mail. I don't know if anyone has any news or any mail. Another presentation.
Well, and there is, one of the projects that you guys did with 12 Robinson is coming to completion. And, while in our street, there's controversy about the color, it looks really good.
There was a lot of discussion about color.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think that it's already sort of settled in, so.
Yes, thank you for.
What for you is, are you a neighbor?
I'm 2 doors down.
What's most notable about the project in terms of?
It's
positives?
actually occupied. It has virtually been unoccupied for 30 plus years. And for a while, the fellow who lived there, who was the son, was literally the neighborhood Boo Radley. He was occasionally having problems. So that's great. And it's a historic resource for the town. It's right at the front when you come in. And I think it's a really successful project for this group.
Nice to see something preserved instead of torn down.
Yeah. And the inside, the interior, the original portion of the structure, the interiors were really, they had a really careful craftsman to essentially restore it, or not restore it, just keep it.
No, thank you for that update. Anyone else, any other members? Updates? All right, so we have Park and Rec is here with us tonight to talk about the tennis court project, which of course went to town meeting last May. We did at that time approve, and we approved, recommended it to town meeting, and it was approved by town meeting to buy or to renovate the tennis courts at the high school. There have been some issues with that, and I think Tim and Alicia are here to kind of talk us through those and then to present an updated project for us. So I have the controls.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for having us tonight. We have kind of done the circuit with going to the different committees and boards and went over what the project looks like. Unfortunately, we made it to you guys last. We were kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to see what the school project was going to look like, and potentially the use of the Whitcourt Field area. So that's where we are at tonight. If you'd like to flip that first slide for me, just be the next page down.
I know, why did it work before?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. So essentially, just to give everybody a quick rundown of where we're at. So all the project aspects that are being proposed tonight have been something that the town has been chasing for a while. So ongoing PRC town and capital requests since 2016 has been field creation, outlined in the 2017 Town of Littleton Field Needs Assessment Study, which was done by Galen Associates, included in the Town of Littleton Open Space and Recreation Plan in 2016 and 2024. So the tennis court project became necessary after the demolition of the town hall tennis courts to make way for the center on Shattuck Street. These were 2 tennis courts that were lined with 4 pickleball courts. Originally, the location was chosen for the Cooper Farm property. It was designed, contracted, and due to the $1.1 million cost, the article was pulled before the fall of 2022 meeting. Littleton High School location was then chosen, and the architect used for the Cooper Farm design submitted to us a concept drawing with an estimation of cost that came in around $734,000. The 734 from CP was approved for the renovation of the Littleton High School tennis courts to 4 tennis courts and was voted on at the fall of the 23 meeting. In May of 2024, PRC met with Littleton Public Schools and a landscape architect from Activitas to review the Littleton High School site and come up with a project timeline. The architect advised us that the concept drawing did not take into account the proper court setbacks, and necessary site work would probably exceed the allotted funding of the 734. So the other big piece was that 2024 project timeline beginning in June was not attainable. Most of the contractors had already booked themselves out, and we were also working up against the fact that we had to be out before school started, and we were working, the sewer project was pretty heavily over in the same area that we would have been working in. So in May of 2024, I sat down with athletic director Mike Lynn. We reviewed the plans and we formulated a proposal for tennis courts, as well as some other field needs that we had been chasing for quite a while. June of 2024, we had a planning meeting that involved PRCE, Littleton Public Schools, DPW, the TA's office, Park and Rec, commission reps, and representatives from all these sports organizations. In June of 2024, we asked Activitas to put together a fee proposal for design, permitting, bidding, and construction administration, which came in at $112,000, and to estimate the total proposed cost of the entire project. So,
New project.
yes. So the new the new project has basic two components that really achieve four things for the town of Littleton. So first of all, as you see in the application, the very first piece of it under project description is the creation of 4 new tennis courts at the middle school site. This will be used for all high school, middle school practices and matches, PRCE programming, Littleton Public School phys ed, and it'll also be open to the public. This allows us to then renovate the existing high school tennis courts to make up for the loss of the town hall courts. So rather than having to build new tennis courts to make up for them, we were able to renovate those, put the same 4 pickleball courts on. That work has already been completed. The nice part about that is it's also going to be next to the new home Park and Rec in the school administration building at the 36 King Street site. With that, the other piece of this project that we pulled in is the second part, which is the rehabilitation of Wickham baseball field to the level of Jet softball field. So Jet softball field was part of the alumni field project. We have a kind of premier softball field. We do not have that for our boys, so it's a little bit of a reverse title. So as far as working with that, we'll relocate the high school baseball field and all youth 90-foot baseball games to the Wickham field, allowing for the high school complex to be used for all of our grass field needs. Utilization, and then the last point on there is the utilization of the high school grass field complex for all those sports needs. Currently, we did a demo for this in the fall. It allowed us to fit 3 full-size fields. We would have potentially the ability to fit a 4th in the future. And as I said, we piloted that this fall. Working through project description, number 1 of the CPC objective. This is our proposed new construction at the Littleton Middle School location. This is the overlay of what the tennis courts would look like next to the middle school parking lot. The 1, 2, 3, 4 are the adjacent pictures as it sits currently on the middle school field. Each of them line up with where the corners would be on this project. On the lower side of that slide, you can also see that the intent is to keep what we would have left in grass would give us approximately an 8v8 soccer field that would remain there for use for the youth sports. Moving on, bullet point number 2. So this is still under the objective 1. This was just something that happened with it. So rather than having to build new pickleball courts, which was also something that was kind of on the radar, we were able to we crack sealed these, repainted them, put all the striping back on. So this is essentially exists as is right now, exactly what the town hall tennis courts were. And those pictures were just taken. All right, objective number 2, this is the rehabilitation of Wickham baseball field. So as you can see, there's Wickham baseball field on the left of the slide. The proposal for this field is to bring it up to the level of Jet field. So that would mean putting fencing the entire way around the field. This would include dugouts for the players, on deck circles, and warm-up mounds for the pitchers. This would also include putting up screening to protect the cars from baseball. For those of you guys who do not know, since the sewer project went online, we have not used the varsity field at the high school because those fields were offline. One of the things that came from that is baseball started having a lot of spectators. Kids were coming over from the other athletics, watching the baseball games. And for the first time in, I believe, about 7 or 8 years, we hosted our first tournament. We were at the MIA tournament level. So that was something that was exciting for the guys this year. In talking with Mike Lynn, baseball was just such a better product here, and the youth sports organizations agreed with that as well. So just to give you an idea of the why, in the spring season, that is currently how the varsity baseball field sits. So as you can see, we lose two of our full-size fields that we currently use. The one that's the farthest left, we've never painted. We do have the ability to paint it if we were to get rid of the varsity field at the high school. In the springtime, soccer numbers are actually larger than they are in the fall for the most part. They've been that way for the past couple of years. So losing 3 fields out back is very detrimental to the ability to satisfy all of the user groups that we currently have. One of the things that we've had on capital projects since 2016 or before is the creation of a new sports field at a cost to the town of about $1.1 million estimated in 2016. This gives us the ability to, at the cost of pretty much paint, to have 2 more fields that we've been chasing for a really long time. The only thing we need to do is move the field away. So the picture on the right is what that looks like. We don't have the varsity baseball field there, and it lives over at Wickham, which gives us the ability to have all of those extra green space fields for soccer, lacrosse, any other any other users that we might have. So if we flip to the next piece of this, project goals, this project aligns with the CPC goals by preserving the number of tennis courts in town, creating new tennis courts and additional field space, and rehabilitating an existing facility in Wickham Field. It addresses the town of Littleton PRC capital requests, addresses recommendations from the 2016 Gale Field Needs Assessment Study, addresses goals from the 2017 master plan, and addresses 2016 and 2024 open space and recreation plan. So project timeline, if we were to obtain funding at this fall town meeting, the estimated project timeline would be as follows. So the week of November 4th, we'd hope to sign a contract for design, construction, and bid. The week of December 2nd, we'd hope to open bids and have those closed the week of December 18th prior to the holiday. Once everybody kind of comes back, we would hope to meet and review the selected bids. Week of June 20, and after everything kind of goes through, we would look to start the project sometime in the week of June 23rd. The drop dead date that last week of August, so we can complete everything, have it packed up and ready to go for the beginning of the 2024-25 school year. So the entire project would be expected to complete within 1 year with the construction schedule above. Most of the construction would take place between June 16th and August 11th.
That's 25, right?
25, correct.
Oh, August 2025.
Correct.
Upcoming summer.
This upcoming summer. So by the schedule that we just outlined, that's going to give us the ability to get contractors on board and book them ahead of time so that we can actually have a summertime project. So the total amount of this project has increased from the 734 to the 1,034,340,000, sorry. And we will be funding as follows. So currently, assuming we had the CPC recreation bucket of 700,000, LELWD had gifted an additional $200,000 in their last meeting to support this project. On May 17th, or May 7th of 2024, there was a transfer from the town to the CPC rec bucket for $118,350. And then the balance of $15,650 to be determined, either the town may borrow the funds or it'll be funded by the operating budget. So that makes up the entire amount of what we are looking to have voted on / what we're, the total project cost. In addition to that,
Could we stick with this slide for a minute?
we can, yeah, if that's what you want to do. I just had some other figures that we were chasing, just to let you guys know.
Yeah, there. I just wonder if you could recap them,
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe a little more slowly.
Sure, so, what we're looking for this project is a total of, $1,034,000. So the funding mechanism and how the warrant article is written is that 700,000 of that would come from the CPC bucket. So originally we had the 734 that was appropriated. We're looking at the 700 number coming from the bucket.
Can I clarify something really quick?
Yeah.
So, with the article, the way that it's written, it would rescind what had originally been approved, that 734, so that wouldn't exist anymore. So we would be starting from scratch essentially, if that helps.
Good. Thank you. So that would be the 700,000. Last week, LELWD, they had a sum of money that they were looking to give to a project. And we had approached them about the project and they voted as a board to put forth the $200,000 towards covering the balance, the difference of the project as was submitted before and now. So that's where that 200 comes from.
That was the Lake Water Commission. They had sold a property and had gifted that money. Yeah.
So on May 7th of 2024, there was a transfer from the town to the CPC recreation bucket in the amount of $118,350.
That's just a note. That's,
Yeah.
a helpful note.
We already had that, Carol. That's
That was, I thought that was in anticipation of what they were gonna borrow.
Right, and I think that,
I don't think that was real money though that went into there, was it?
as,
I mean, that's what.
that's what the warrant article has it written.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that in terms of the total recreation bucket, do you know how much we have in reserve?
Yeah, because we were only taking 334, because we were gonna borrow 334,000, so we were only taking 400 from the recreation budget the last time. So we have, I think we've got, we have the 1.3 million, and that's before, the fiscal year's transfers take place.
Oh.
But I think there was about as much going out as coming in, so I think if we figure 1.3, that's probably. And then we have undesignated, we've got like 700,000 in there too, so. But we're now taking more out than we were before.
Unless we borrow.
Well, the FinCom didn't want to borrow, was the short answer. And there is, I guess the other part is there is already the text of the warrant article. I mean, I'm sure we could amend it if we wanted to, but the text is already there and published. Jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah, and that was the last bullet point was, it was amended that, the borrowing would be 15,650. And they could borrow funds, or it could be funded through the operating budget for that balance. In the meeting that we had, the joint FinCom meeting and the select board meeting, when it was brought up that the $200,000 might be available, that was when the conversation started happening. Well, does that then change the amount that we want to borrow versus the amount that we want to fund through the CPC?
So just to clarify too, that 200,000, was that existing in the bucket, and LELWD essentially just had to give your approval to spend it?
Correct. Right, they had to designate. It was really up to them to designate for a particular project, so the town has to.
So it's not
ask for
a
that.
new, it's not a new gift, it's the one we've been
It's the one,
talking about.
yes, it's
Okay.
been holding there, so this is the project that the town decided to ask.
And the revenue source is a gift to the town or
Yeah.
something, and so it's considered blended funds.
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, was 3 or 4 years ago.
yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, just,
So one more thing, so the 200 is already, and it's not in addition to what we have in the budget now, it's.
Right, it's included in there.
And what was that total again? Approximately?
Approximately 1.375.
So once again, we would be essentially taking 900. Well, more than 1,118,350 out of this, the recreation bucket.
No,
Well, the 200 is in the bucket.
right,
As long as they
700.
have it.
it would be 900,000.
Yeah, but then there's this transfer from town to the CPC.
Yeah, the one.
Oh, yeah,
And that's not included in here because that was done at the Maytown meeting. But I don't feel like that's real money.
what do you mean by that, Carolyn?
It was debt, sir. In fact, we questioned it when they put it on the warrant and we're like, well, what's that? We haven't even started the tennis court project. So why are you allocating money? And Steve said it was in anticipation because the project was going to start. That's how he explained it. If I can find the,
So you're saying the 118,000 is in addition to the 1.375?
no, it's included
It's
in the one.
included.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Town meetings and documents. If I can pull up the town meeting. That was May fiscal. Oh, we were like number. Community preservation. Budget.
Sorry, I walked in, that's really quiet. So I did go back and I found the May 7th, annual town meeting.
Yeah,
And it does say free cash transfer to CPC, and it was, $118,350. That was to provide debt service. Was supposed to provide debt service payments for
right,
the first year of the tennis court.
right.
So that was actual real money that was transferred from
For the debt
free
service,
cash, yeah,
in anticipation of the debt service,
correct.
And is it,
but we don't have any debt service.
well,
No,
is
but
it in the
the
bucket though?
funds would be in the budget.
Yeah.
Right, but
Is it in our bucket now? So.
it's not, I don't think it's included in this 1.3 because when, Michelle gave me this, she said this doesn't include, the FY25 budget hasn't been booked yet.
So you had said that, so if this money was transferred in anticipation of us borrowing money, why do they not want to do that now?
so, at the FinCom meeting and the Board of Selectmen meeting, the question was that if we were able to get the extra $200,000 and not have to borrow money, that they would rather just spend the money that they had rather than borrow. And since
But was the town borrowing or the CPC borrowing? Because
So it was
we're,
all-
yeah,
It was, The original article is CPC was borrowed.
Yeah,
Okay,
So it's, the money was gonna come out of CPC either in one chunk or in over a span of a few years. We had originally, I think, wanted to spread it out over a few years because it left a little bit larger pile to
Right.
work on other projects. In the end, it costs us less.
Yeah.
To do it all in one chunk. We just have a low balance for a while.
Yeah. And Ryan, I texted him and he said, it is real money.
right.
And it's recommended by Steve Venuti, who's the chair of FinCom.
Yeah, because actually in the new article for next week, the last line, which is at 118, is being stricken and inserting in place of the project description is providing funding for the design and construction of the tennis court.
So it's different now.
Yeah.
Okay. So from when you were out of the room,
Yeah.
Carolyn was saying that the 200,000 is already in our budget.
Okay,
So it's it's not in addition to what we have, the 200 here. It's already in our.
but that was something that wasn't to be used unless it was approved by the Light and Water
Right.
Commissioners.
Right.
So, I mean, it is, I know it seems like it's separated, but it's just kind of explaining where each of those components are coming from.
I'm guessing it's a separate line item for the treasurer.
That I don't know. We'd have to check with finance to
So they'll
see.
just zero
Yeah.
that line item out, so we
Yeah.
don't.
so, yeah, because the way this is. This could be read, oh, we're just voting on 700,000, but we're really voting on $1,018,350.
Minus the 1560 that is either gonna be borrowed or,
Right, well, no, that's
That's
with,
more.
that's, yeah, that, and then there's the 1560.
Right.
Yeah. And could we consider funding that?
You could, I suppose. This was put
Or is the
together.
town so
by-
strapped that they can't?
I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Yeah, so the wording of the warrants is in that the 15,650 be borrowed by the treasurer, who is authorized with the approval of the select board to issue any bonds or notes that may be necessary for that purpose. As authorized and not to exceed the maximum number of years authorized by law.
It does seem strange to borrow 15,000.
Well, that's why it's to be determined, because it does seem a little silly for us to borrow for such a small amount. So I think they knew that much was left over and they knew that they would pay it. If for some reason they can't find the funds in the operating budget, then they may have to discuss borrowing those funds. But I think well, I know that decision will be made before we get to town meeting. So we'll know what the to be determined answer is. I just don't have that answer for you right now, but it will be one or the other.
So then the next, question is, how hard are these numbers? I mean, you haven't actually bid it yet. What if?
our numbers have, both of these numbers for both projects have a 20% contingency built into them.
That's,
So the tennis court and the Wickham project.
Wait till we get to the next page.
okay.
Yeah, we can revisit this, but I think we might want to hear the next
Yeah.
piece of it.
So, the other pieces of this are,
Go back. There you go.
so in addition, we're working on the following to reduce project costs. So collaboration with the Department of Public Works during our initial design phase to identify where highway department can assist with reducing expenses. Mainly this would be site prep and, things like that. We submitted an application and got conditional approval for $55,000 construction grant, or for up to a $55,000 construction grant from the United States Tennis Association. There was an email that was sent to the CPC and the other boards on that last week. Today, we worked through and submitted the application for Major League Baseball Youth Development Foundation. So that generally is about a $25,000 grant if it's accepted. And we're working with Littleton youth sports organizations, specifically soccer and baseball, to identify gift contributions to this project cost.
And what's the timeline for when will we get the money after, is it one of those you have to build it and then you get it back, like a reimbursement
For tennis.
Yeah.
for tennis?
Yeah, so they require, it's all in that email as well.
Yeah,
They require that they're kind of in from the ground floor, so they've assigned us the project manager to go through all the steps. And then, yes, it's, once the project is completed and it's met all of the boxes, then they give a check for the amount that they've, committed to. So same thing with the Major League Baseball grant, and then, the youth sport organizations are kind of in the same boat. They're waiting to kind of just take stock as, once they have their elections and go through all their finances and see where everything parses out to see what they were able to help out with.
So when if the money was to come in from these grants, where would it go? Would it go to CPC or would it?
Yep.
Correct.
It would?
So what we would do is the monies would be used, essentially, the monies specifically like USTA, that money would go directly to, you know, whomever was paying the construction bills at that time. So we wouldn't spend the CPC funds, we would return those. So that money would be utilized to pay whatever costs we have out there, and then CPC funds would just be returned as they are in any other project.
So when they did the football field, and when you say jet field, are you referring to just the softball?
Softball field,
Just the
correct.
softball?
Yep.
So I hate that, you know, put this crassly, but what is the naming rights worth? I mean, could you get someone to name the baseball field? And if you do have someone to hook, will you ask an appropriate
Jeff
amount
needs
of money?
people.
Pardon?
Jeff needs people.
Not for baseball, sorry.
So I believe the baseball field's already named after one of the victims. So I don't know that we would necessarily historically change that.
Yeah.
I think that would stay the
Well, you
same.
could, well, I don't know. How much money did they get?
Excellent question, Sarah.
No,
There are long, I said there are long titles of,
Oh, yeah, I tell you, these,
Major League Bank.
campus.
Unfortunately, if we said it's Whitcomb Field at such and such park, then
Yeah.
it would qualify for
Or-
CPC.
or-
thing.
Yeah. I'm just, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, you don't get money unless you ask for it.
I
That's
hear
all.
you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, you know, we can look at too is, revisiting the idea of like sponsorships. So a lot of the other surrounding towns do sponsorships on the specifically their outfield fences. That's been something that hasn't typically been done around here. So that's something that we could revisit with the schools, and, you know, it is currently being done down at the Shaker Lane field for the small things. So yes, there's a potential that we cannot, because we don't have a friends of, but if we could find somebody who could, like the youth sports organizations, things like that, find some sponsorships, and that is something we could potentially look into as well.
There is a little bit of that at Jeff too.
So lastly, just to kind of, last couple things in the application, were that we've been in communication and collaboration, with Dr. Kelly Clenchey, the Littleton Public School Superintendent, and Steve Marks, business manager, on this design, and they are supportive of this project. Mike Lynn, the Littleton Public School Athletic Director, is supportive of this project. The school committee approved to support the project and to allow construction on school property as needed. And the park commission approved and supported this project. As written in the Warren article, the finance committee and select board recommendations are forthcoming, awaiting the outcome of this meeting. And they will be making that decision either in a joint meeting prior to town meeting or on the town meeting floor.
I think it's usually like, at 6:30, they have a meeting to kind of tie up all these things, so more than likely then.
I think that's what they mentioned. All right.
The timeline looks good, but it seems pretty aggressive. I hope it all falls into place.
2
It
months?
seems
to
very
finish it?
aggressive.
What's that?
The timeline
Oh,
for getting all the
so the,
bids and estimates and bids and such.
well, that's all of that would start in November, right?
No, I see
That
the dates.
It's-
Right, so the actual build itself would be, yes, the 2 months, which would be in June.
I'm saying it's
July.
all very aggressive.
However, if you look at what actually needs to be done, it's not a very difficult project. Because if you want to go into that a little bit more, you can.
Well, I was just gonna say, so to answer your question about the bid process and the turnaround, we've been very actively speaking with the architects. They're based out of Lexington. So this is, once everything's kind of approved and ready to go, this is the timeline that they had given us to say, this is what we need to hit. Part of the reason that this project wasn't going to be able to happen last year is we need to be on this timeline in order to book contractors for that June through August timeframe.
Yeah.
So this is the timeframe that they would like to follow to see this happen.
I hope it works.
I hope so too. I'm pretty confident. They've been very quick,
Yeah.
to turn around all of their answers and, they come, highly recommended. They're on the state bid list. So, they'll put all the bids and everything out for us as well. And they've done projects that are very similar, pretty much identical to what we're trying to do to Wickham. They were the company who just completed the baseball field in Air. So, very similar projects. They have, contractors and things, exactly that they've already used for the scope of work we're looking for. So as long as the bids come back appropriate, then, we should be able to get everything going on that line.
I'm with you.
So that's the full presentation. The application is in front of you, and then myself and Alicia are here for any other questions that you guys might have.
So these proposed courts at the middle school, would they be publicly accessible during and after school hours?
Yeah, so the request that's been made by the school department, specifically, Principal Everhart, is that, if the courts are built at the middle school, that they would be accessible to the school during the school hours. And then just like any other playing field, priority would come to the school sports organizations, PRCE organizations, and then, public and private organizations as they are.
Gotcha. Would they be locked up, kind of like at the TAC though, or not in use?
We haven't gotten that far
Yeah.
yet. There will definitely be signage, something to the effect that, courts are available to the public between this and this, obviously during non-school hours, holiday weeks, all of those kind of things. What we would do is the high school courts would then become the public courts that would exist out here.
Hmm.
So the pickleball memberships will still go through Park and Rec. Now that we will be at 36 King Street at the time, it'll operate the same way. They can come inside and get the equipment. They can go up. There are gates on the back side of that court that they can access from the Indian Hillside. So that will become the more rec playing space and be much more available, similar to how the town courts were.
Gotcha.
So those will be available during school hours.
And what about the two courts? They're not that bad. I went there look at them.
So a couple things about those. So,
I mean, okay, if you're playing a tournament, they're bad, but if you're just hitting the ball around.
the high school is the only one who's actually authorized to
Correct.
use those.
Okay,
The other piece to it is,
So it
if
can't
you
be a
haven't
public
been on
rec.
them, they are actually pretty dangerous because all the manhole covers are right in the middle.
okay.
And then,
They're not manholes. They're anyway.
and then the other, there's ponding. There's a lot
I
of
guess
ponding issues.
I'm on the planning board and it just rips us all. That was a useless amendment. So that's all.
And you're talking of the course behind Weber Village.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see why Weber Village would want them accessible.
Yeah.
I mean. Okay.
So my other question is the mechanism for funding this. So I know that we're looking to essentially withdraw the previous projects and to fund this new project, like voted eligible and grant funding.
Mhm.
The way that it's written in the warrant, though, basically says that we're amending the previous project vote. So I'm just curious, is that kind of setting a bad precedent? Can we somehow put it through as a new project for town meetings purposes with eligibility and funding?
No, I think, so we've definitely had many conversations with town administrator's office, how we want to do this. And I think the easiest is to be able to say, as this is saying, we're striking the following language and we're amending it to this. Because realistically, the heart of that project being the tennis courts is still the same. That hasn't changed. It's just, what we're getting out of it and the location, definitely does change. So I think it makes more sense to kind of do all of those components together as far as striking the old, bringing in the new. I think that was what they felt was the easiest way to just kind of, tie everything out.
With the scope kind of changing though, and it being a new project, I'm just wondering, with other projects that we previously approved though, would it then be possible for us to go back into those projects and add a different scope? I'm fully supportive of the project, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, mechanism wise.
Yeah, I kind of wish that the Whitcomb Field was separate and we amended the tennis court project if we were going to amend it. Um,
It's kind of a weird funding
I
mechanism.
know, I, especially because it's so much, the funding is different. Because now we're taking it all out of our bucket rather than only half.
Like, if you guys had an eligibility and funding request for new projects tonight, I mean, I feel like that would be, I would find it favorable. I'm just wondering if the way that we're kind of going about it is a little messy, kind of reopening our previous projects and changing the scope and dollar amounts.
I mean, I will say we have done things like this before. I know when we had done renovations on the Long Lake Beach, we were a little too specific about things. So we had to go back and be able to change that wording so that we could include, I don't know if it was like electrical work or something that wasn't originally included. So this is something that we have done in the past. We don't like doing it. But in these sort of situations when, we really are trying to turn something around, unfortunately, this is kind of where we get stuck. Yeah.
Yes.
Carolyn, I think there's sort of maybe two things at stake, and that would help us with our action tonight. One is the eligibility. I think that's more of a policy type thing. I think we should be strict with our own with ourselves to follow a process and talk about it and certify that the new project description is eligible for CP funds. That would be one thing. The second thing about sort of what Parks and Recreation is asking us tonight is that it's the money of it. And then I think what town meeting needs to know, according to CP law, is that we approve the spending of the money. It comes down to the dollars. So there's that, and if town hall recommends we do it that way, and they write the warrant articles like that, I think we'd be safe so long as we are true to our process, at least a little bit, by saying we should discuss the eligibility and certify it.
I agree, because the key thing is the town meeting vote on spending this money. It's spelled out what the money will be used for, and the only messiness is there was a previous project that, went away.
Right.
And however this is presented, it should be that, like, okay. Well, anyway, it just needs, I had no problem with the messiness. As long as, town meeting approves the expenditure.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is that the 700 just says appropriated from the I'm reading what's on the screen now, from the Community Preservation Fund balance. It doesn't give a bucket.
Well, we can identify the bucket, right?
It does say.
Well, then it says that the 200 from the reservation.
Oh,
Cause
So if you take a vote tonight, then you could clarify that you want that money to come out of that recreation budget bucket, right? Yeah.
well, do we or do we want to take some undetermined funds? Well, let's talk about to the Park and Rec people. I mean, you're wiping out most of the money. So this is your big play
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the reality is the benefits that we get out of this, we've had a new field creation on the capital fund since I started here in 2016. Every single year we've asked for that, and it's kind of like, okay, next year, okay, next year. So with being able to, over the last few years, Tim's done a really good job with the sports council and really communicating to them on what they need and how we can use what we have in a more efficient way so that we can meet those requirements that we were trying to hit with the 2017 field master plan. So by us, this is kind of where why it's important to have the Whitcomb component embedded with this, is that with both of those projects, that frees up there was that image, if you can recall it again, where there's the 4 fields that were out at the high school. And typically we have mixed use with like all of the fields. So baseball would get, appropriated these days at this time, and then only the far end field could be used because that, the width of the field into the outfield is such a large array that, you can't use the second or third field at all. So with moving baseball and it not being up there at all, now you have that safe ability to be able to use those 3 fields or 4 if we chose to add on that one. So you're getting the benefit of, we would be taking the field need, the new field creation off of capital. That's something that, we wouldn't ask for that in the future. So that would be gone. That's one huge project, right? Then the addition is, I think the last few years we put on like the pickleball courts. And so that was something we talked about potentially putting in the back corner of the 36 King Street area. Now, because those pickleball courts exist over at the high school, that project's gone, right? So you think about the savings that you're getting because all we're doing is just shifting things around, rehabilitating a few things, and we're fixing all of our problems that we need for sports use, which is huge. We've been trying to figure that out forever. So this is ultimately that solution for that. So yes, the big projects with any of the athletic stuff, that's done.
And could you explain to the board about the potential competing demand for the Whitcomb Field site that has gone away now
You mean for the
for
school?
the school?
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons why we unfortunately had to bring this late to the CPC. The Whitcomb site was chosen as a potential for them building a new elementary school. So they're looking at replacing Shaker Lane. Their architects had come up with renovations to the current building, rebuilding on the site at Shaker Lane in a few different locations. And then they also had talked about wanting this campus idea because it would be essentially the middle school, Russell Street Elementary, and then, Shaker, or whatever they decided to call it, which would be there on Whitcomb.
Naming rights.
So ultimately, they went through their process of selection of which sites that they would choose. Whitcomb was thrown out, I would say relatively early-ish or like middle of the road for a few different reasons. And the sites that were chosen to go to the state, so there's like three different choices. So one choice was to do the renovation at Shaker Lane, and then one would be essentially doing it in the first baseball field. And then essentially they would demolish the old building and put those fields in, or the backfield. So those are the 3 choices that they have actually sent to the state. Once you send those off to the state, the other sites are no longer in play. So we did get the approval of the town administration with a green light to go ahead with this project because they were no longer considering, Whitcomb Field for that location for a school.
It's not in your purview, but the school department is okay with having the high school baseball sort of remote from the high school now?
So all the high school sports, there's no one at the high school right now except for soccer. So, and that was one of the things, if you go back and watch the meetings, when Mike Lynn's talking about is there's always going to be transportation to the middle school site. The minute that they decided they were gonna build alumni field and jet field there and the track,
The track.
that became basically the athletic epicenter for all youth sports and high school sports in the town of Littleton.
So it actually makes things easier for the high school athletics
It's
because
more,
all
Yeah,
the kids,
concentrate.
right, can get on, the buses together. And it's not just like here in the past with tennis, they'd have to bring them out here to do some of the games and then sometimes at high school, they'd have to switch them. So, yeah, so this does consolidate the athletics together.
So this is the language right now that's in the for the town meeting.
Just get to the point that I think that Jeff and I can do, we just want to talk about the eligibility for our own process and move that and.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much question, it's.
Right, because of the addition of the baseball field, it's different eligibility than we
Yeah,
previously voted on.
sure. It's where I'm kind of hung up. I would say
Yeah.
it's definitely an eligible project.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to play it out in my mind, you know, because it is technically a new project as opposed to amending, it's a shame that they kind of went that route.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, if they had just put rescind previous article and then new CPC article right after it.
Yeah.
Slam dunk. But the way that it's kind of listed here is like, it's just,
I agree.
it's kind of a weird precedent where, like, if a project gets funding, down the road, you could potentially come back and ask for more under the same, and expand the scope. Again, I support the project, I don't want to set a bad precedent.
I don't see a problem with that.
Because we have to, approve the money in town meeting anyway, regardless of
Right.
how it
Right.
comes before.
The project changes scope, changes scope.
Well-
If it's still eligible and we still agree with it, then.
So one of the things that came up as we were talking through this is to do these as two separate projects and to contract it as such, there's additional fees. So initially, it was estimated there's about a $30,000 to $60,000 difference, depending on what the scope of work would have been on Wickham, to bid these out as two separate projects. So instead of spending $112,000 once, or whatever the cost would be minus the baseball field, we'd basically be bidding out two separate projects. So we'd have more of a design, construction, and bidding process, which was why the two, when we spoke about it, were tied together. The other piece is in compiling this, like Alicia said, utilizing 2016 numbers and the numbers that we're currently using for pickleball and the tennis court project. If you take those numbers, put them all together, obviously it's a little not accurate because some of those numbers are very old.
Yeah.
We take about what the town was going to tolerate for about $3.6 million worth of projects that could have potentially happened. Not that, that money was ever really going to be spent, to putting this under and meeting the needs for what we say is approximately the next 5 to 8 years for the youth sports in the high school as far as space needs. We're showing a $2.2 million cost savings overall.
Well, you need to present that way. I mean, people will respond to that.
Yeah.
Which is why ultimately we decided to tie them together, because we had the design, construction, and bid process being put together, same company. What will then probably happen is cost may come down a little bit, because in theory, the same defense contractor will bid both jobs. So they'll be buying more stuff in bulk, doing the tennis court. And so that's where some of this stuff saves us money by bidding out together,
Absolutely.
in theory.
Yeah, I think it made perfect sense to lump them. It's just a shame that it wasn't kind of listed as a new project, you know what I mean, like grouped together and then listed as a new, as opposed to amending a previous
Right.
project.
And I wish I had a better answer for you. We did work with the town administrator's office. We did consult town council.
Yeah.
We did even go as far as saying like, can any of this be paid out of the rec revolving, which that is something that, you know, was deemed absolutely not. So in getting all those answers and working with Ryan to rewrite the article, this is kind of where everything went.
And I mean, Saul does have a fair point that if somebody were to come back and amend something in the future, it still lays with you to make that decision to say yes or no, right? So, even though somebody may request that change or an amendment, at the end of the day, you still hold the power of whether that happens or not.
Again, fully support the project, just want to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Yeah, I hear you.
Great.
Yeah, because we don't really have even a line item budget of what's being spent. I don't know. All right, want to do something about the eligibility? We don't have an eligibility in front of us, but we can vote. for
Carla, when you
project.
say line item budget, what numbers specifically were you looking?
Well, no, I mean, at the last one, I guess the numbers were not true numbers, but we had, I think that was the one we had, you know, what was gonna be spent for
Right.
this, what, I mean,
Yeah, so-
for the baseball, you know, how are you, we don't know what you're spending on baseball and.
Yep, so hang on one second,
What?
I'll pull that up and I can, if you'd like, I can amend that as well. So in the initial, conversation with Activitas, so for design, bid, construction documents, the whole package that comes along with that and getting us to the point where we're actually starting construction, that was $112,000 for that package.
Is that included in this,
That is.
that we are
included,
paying
yeah.
for that?
So that was where we had looked and said, hey, can we jumpstart this and pay for this out of the rec revolving fund? And that
Yeah.
was something that was shot down.
Yeah.
So $112,000 is the design, construction and bid, process. For 4 asphalt tennis courts, fencing, surfacing equipment with a 20% contingency is $600,000. Improvements to Wickham baseball field, including new backstops, netting, fencing, team areas, concrete pads, benches, shelters, outfield fence, also with a 20% contingency was $350,000. So that's where we come up with our entire project cost.
I think we should, can you type that out? and
I
give
can
that to
100%
us
amend that into
tomorrow
the
or
document.
something?
That on the way that was written out in there, that just wasn't really a good place to put that, so I could absolutely make number 6 and put that in there for you.
Mhm.
Can you forward that to me and I'll go print it? So do you want me to do that?
I'll just, would you you just want it in the CPC in the document I sent you yesterday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll just amend that and send it out.
Okay, is that all right with everybody?
Mhm.
Do that.
The only thing I can think of that would sort of, that's worth asking is, are there anything that would be considered a stadium about this project? Or is there use of artificial turf?
No turf at
No
all
turf.
and no stadium at
Yeah,
all.
so we're not constructing bleachers or walls or anything like that to the effect of concourses, all those kind of things. So, and that was one of the things that we did, already vet was this does not fall under that.
Is there any additional parking costs?
So we're not gonna add any parking. We're not renovating it in such a way that we're going to see an influx in parking. Because like I said, since the sewer project started, we've utilized this space for baseball. Even prior to that, it just, that's where JV and youth typically played. The other piece is we are taking away a large portion of the user group because soccer is now going to the high school. They're no longer coming to Wickham Field, and the track to play. So we're taking, you know, a large part of that number, which is between 600 and 700 kids who are showing up throughout the week and Saturdays and Sundays for games, and moving them completely up to the high school space that's currently not being utilized with the exception of the fall soccer season.
So just to kind of go back to your point, the only components that are being added on to that Wickham field would be dugouts. I think batting cage.
So they were all listed in this.
Yeah, the on deck, circle, so to speak. I think there would be a fix to the backstop and an addition of, like a fence or netting so that if there's pop-ups, that they're not gonna go into the parking lot and break people's windows. I believe a home run fence, right, in the back.
So the whole field will be fenced in. It'll have netting to protect the cars, on deck circles. It'll have dugouts, full dugouts, just like a jet field.
Would you say?
There you go.
Here's a different question, but, would you say that, it's more creating recreation or rehabilitating and restoring? recreation?
Rehabilitation and restoration. So this is a field that currently exists and we're really rehabilitating it to the state of play that is accustomed, that the players are accustomed to. Both, you know, like I said, we were looking to get it to the level of where Jet softball field currently is. And when you look at fields in our surrounding communities that the varsity baseball teams are playing on, it'll make this a comparable site. If you go up to the varsity baseball field as it sits up there, even though it's in quite bad disrepair right now, there's dugouts, there's batting cages, there's on deck circles, there's things that don't exist at Wickham. The only reason we moved them down there was, you know, at the time it was the sewer project and we found that, you know, through all the things I already mentioned, you know, they were getting fans showing up down there. It really just became a better product for baseball. It also gave us the ability to now have a home for the youth sports that we didn't have behind high school.
So are those structures being removed? Or
So
is
right
that-
now, the plan would be to, and Carolyn, if you go back to that soccer slide, and this is kind of just we're always thinking about what the net, down, please, I'm sorry. The one with the, yes, so we're always thinking about what could potentially come next. And if you really look at that right slide right there, you'll notice there's a baseball field of much smaller stature.
Mhm.
Ideally, we would mothball the varsity field. We would keep it as is for now. There's also a softball field that hasn't been used up there.
I know my daughter's played on the softball
So-
field on the left.
What we thought about is rather, and why I say we can paint 3 fields, potentially in the future, we can put a 4th, is we've thought and decided that we're gonna keep those 2 fields kind of mothballed until we know what the Shaker Lane project brings, because we may lose Cooper and Ken White. And at a very minimal cost, we can then skim those infields and have 2 fields to replace those very quickly while the construction's going on. And because they're smaller fields, they still won't have the impact on those 3 fields because the outfield fences are so much shorter.
And it wouldn't be a long term, it would just be till,
And then once, you know,
That's
Cooper and Ken White or the Shaker Lane project, because those fields are to be replaced in the design of the school. Once that happened, that's why I say, you know, then we could look at, you know, sodding, doing whatever we had to do, and we could have that 4th field brought online. Which by that time, that would be even more growth potential that we save ourselves, and it's really, and again, it's a nominal cost when we're talking about doing, you know, grass to get a couple, you know, 1,000 square feet of grass to get an entire soccer field, rather than having to build one from scratch.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mhm.
I move that the creation of 4 new tennis courts and the rehabilitation of Whitcomb baseball field are eligible for CPA funding as rehabilitation and restoration of recreation assets.
Can I amend to say that tennis is a creation?
Right.
Tennis courts are a creation, Lincoln Field is a restoration. Rehabilitation.
Right? As the creation and the rehabilitation and restoration of recreation assets.
Mhm.
And then I'll second.
And second. So we have a motion by Mitt, a second by Saul. Does anyone need the motion repeated? If not, we're all here, so we can take a vote. All in favor?
Oh, doesn't it? Yeah,
Mhm.
never mind.
In favor of the motion of eligibility by Mitt, please say aye. Opposed, anyone? So that's eligible.
Does seem like a much better outcome than way back.
I know,
Cooper.
yeah.
Well,
I think the funds should come all out of the recreation bucket based on some of the discussion we've had tonight. That would be my suggestion.
But I think we need to aggregate the total amount rather than this line item like 700, 200.
Right.
It is actually in the article.
yeah, where is it? I have it here.
I guess it's slightly aggregated in the article, but it is.
Yeah.
Because it does say appropriate the
Yeah, no,
915.
It's two chunks. but
Yeah.
it's
Okay,
large.
915, 650.
However, the nine
The, other
fifteen,
include the 1835.
yeah, you'd have to subtract that 15,650. Because if you, so it says appropriate, which is the 700, and the 200, yeah.
Yeah, they
have
they
it
don't have it
highlighted in
both,
there.
yeah,
And then if you scroll down, it'll say, and
and, yes,
that's the 18.
there's the 18, which they've changed the project description.
Carolyn?
I'd like to just think about maybe dipping into reserve, undesignated funds as well. Although what you say, Lynn, makes sense, and that it's all recreation that you're talking,
Yeah.
and Jeffrey's question directly to Alicia was excellent, and Alicia said, yeah, we've been planning on this, we'll spend all our money on this. I'm not trying to manage how Park and Recreation manages their projects and asks for money. They can do that. But I think, we as a committee should think about, other stakeholders, or not stakeholders,
Well,
other
that's-
community members or projects that could come to us. We could get approached tomorrow by a private citizen saying, who said, I have a recreation project, and we'd say, well, we're gonna have to go to reservation, undesignated funds for that. We could do that, but it might also just be prudent to say, to sort of draw lines, say, we wanna allow for the possibilities that other people could propose recreation projects. This is not an entitlement to, that department of our town. And also, I think, I'd like to leave, I'd like to forecast that there'd be other needs for recreation as well, parks and recreation and community education. I think like Long Lake, for instance, and that there's, discussions around how we spend the money. We'll have that tonight as well, how we spend money for our lakes. Town hall is really asking, the town manager is asking that people take a comprehensive or a hybrid approach to funding things. And I think what we're talking about now is the opposite of a hybrid approach. Give them all the money they ask from one bucket.
So I think one thing that I would like to point out is, in the past, when we've talked about CPC projects, it has been something that's very department centric in working on specifically the park and some of the other projects. One of the things that this particular project in this big ask is the department as the town department, we don't really gain a lot from doing this project. This project is very centric towards being conducive to the school department and the high school teams. This is very, very geared towards the youth sports organizations who we represent as a stakeholder in all of these things. So when we're looking at it and saying, the town department, it's really not that in this case. This is something that we've come up with to put together to meet the needs of the entire community of Littleton. Like I said, the schools are going to be the highest user group out of most of this project, as well as the youth organizations.
Interesting, because you could sort of read that argument could break both ways. and then the absent person at this meeting tonight is the school department.
Right.
Maybe they're not absent, but they're through you or through the process. I haven't heard, time and again, this question always comes up, well, are they able to put some skin in the games?
And we have asked them in the past and, yeah. But I will say that with the high school tennis courts, they did, they had held off on doing the resurfacing and fixing of the cracks. And ultimately, when we decided that using that location to add on those tennis courts was gonna be more costly than we wanted it to be, they just went and did it. So they have actually put money into fixing those courts, resurfacing them, repainting them, and they're kind of back to a brand new state. So they did do that.
And that was in the neighborhood of 45 and change, just so you guys are aware of that. They did have that. Because obviously they were maintaining those courts and that was in a budget that they had. So they did go ahead and kick in that so that it could come off of this project.
And they did paint the pickleball court lines too, which they didn't have to do, so.
And when we did get playing fields when the high school was built through that project,
The soccer fields,
behind the high school, yeah,
which is the ones that we're talking about trying to free up by moving the varsity basement.
right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't paid for by CPC. That was the state and the town.
The other argument to Mitt's point is that a big portion of this tennis court replacement is really related to the center on Chaddock Street.
Yeah.
Not recreation. I mean, it's replacing, but the cause is the construction of the center. It wasn't really included in that project, so that lends some weight to the idea of pulling some from the undesignated fund.
The beginning cost, but the final outcome is much improved over just 2 tennis courts.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if that project either hadn't happened or they had included replacing the tennis courts in the project, we wouldn't be here talking about this.
I am more swayed by what Nick and what you're saying. But thinking of other stakeholders, open space, historic, affordable housing, they could also use undesignated funds in the future as opposed to some undesignated funds going towards this project.
Do we know how much is currently in the reserve for undesignated funds?
This was 730,000 before fiscal year 25 budget numbers. I think they're still closing. So probably a little more, because I don't think we really used. What would your percentage be that you would suggest that I mean, is that how you want to do it? Like take,
Well,
I mean, it would
see
take a
both
lump
ways.
sum,
I'd like to hear what other people are thinking of it
It
because,
sort of goes both ways, because if there's low money in recreation bucket, and somebody comes for recreation, CPC can only so much here, and then we can go to undesignated. Then, at that point,
True. It is very flexible money, whereas recreation money has to go towards a recreational goal ultimately.
Right.
just thinking a little bit about my reference to the lakes, and then we'll talk about it more, but I think that's a good example of we might want to leave some money available to manage.
I think I might have undesignated.
Yeah, I guess it could, yeah.
My mom used to say it was 6 of one, half dozen of another,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, honestly, I don't.
The only thing about undesignated, it is much more flexible.
Right.
Yes, right.
Yeah, but in this case, though, we don't, for eligibility, we don't need flexibility. It's sort of straightforward.
we've got to vote the project.
Right, it's
though.
looking
So
forward.
Yeah.
We should project.
In the future, we'd have more flexibility if we took all of this out of recreation. That's-
So Linda, I'd stick with your original thing. I'd support that if you made a motion.
Are we ready to do that, I guess? Any other
I
discussion?
think, the only thing I'd say is I think we probably want to ask the TA's office to put that into the article as an amendment.
Yeah,
So we'll have to have an insert. I'm assuming there'll be a handful of inserts anyway. So
yeah. we'll have to-
Yeah, whichever buckets we use should be
Yeah,
amended
it should
in this article.
And just a quick sticking point too, do we formally have to take that money that was previously allocated back to then give it to this new project?
I don't think so. I think, I don't know. They've written the article with this in mind. The TA's office and the council went through it, so I'm assuming that they have.
I guess because it hasn't been expended yet either. I mean, if we had already given it to them, we'd have to take it back, but it's just.
Or just give them the difference.
I mean, if you want to be safe, just to cover it, you could make a vote to rescind that project. And then another one that would fund.
Well, we could vote to agree with, or not, that's not the verb I want, but agree with the striking of the language and the substitution, you know what I mean? Like,
Is there flexibility where we can withdraw that project and then vote to approve eligibility and funding?
I don't think we need, I think probably the appropriate thing to do is just to approve the proposed article,
Oh, because it includes both.
because it
Yeah.
includes both, right? So it has striking the old.
I mean, I agree, this is not how I would do it.
Nope, not at all.
You know, and I feel a little like we're just expected to do this. Nothing against the project, it's just the mechanics of, you know, we're giving you money for a project that hasn't even been bid on. We have something that we've approved, now we're changing it for, like you say, a different scope. But we're also under the gun, I mean, and it's, like I say, if we say no tonight, we're gonna get a call tomorrow morning and say, meet again in 48 hours and revote that, I just don't see them.
Right.
Yeah.
Could we have a motion that's just about, approving the project? That the project be approved for funding at so many dollars from the recreation, like very CPC relevant, like money decision, and then we could do a very generic vote.
Well, I think we need to vote it this way because we need to have that 200,000. We have to say something explicit about that 200,000 because that's a gift that was expected to go against an article.
Yeah, and based on how we vote, it's kind of problematic too, how it aligns with what's printed in here
Right.
too, which is because we're voting eligibility and funding for new projects. And we're not explicitly saying, let's vote to amend the previous projects. You kind of get what I'm
Well,
saying?
you kind of are by voting in this,
The first.
the first part of it.
A lot of technicalities, yeah.
It's really, but
Well, I mean, I know it's in the interest of everybody's time not to have another meeting, but is it something that we do need to?
No, I think we can do it tonight, don't you think?
I do,
I mean, eventually it goes to town meeting floor,
right.
and that's, it will be discussed that, and I'm assuming you will be doing a presentation, will you do the same?
It'll most likely be the same presentation as I did tonight, I know. Brevity is
So I have a
It's the key there.
Still
But
to-
items like there is a slide that does include the breakdown of cost. Even with their old costs, the savings to the town of approximately $2.2 million by doing things this way, the potential to give us that 5 to 8 year growth potential and the ability to have those, placeholders for fields for the Shaker Lane project so that we're not, net negative fields when that comes to pass. The goal is not to be in the same situation we were with the tennis courts. We're planning ahead for that now, saying that it's gonna cost us X in that period of time to bring those online. So couple things are gonna be added to that effect.
I think we should do a hybrid vote of, like Mitt suggested, a CPC normal vote and a vote to accept and amend the town warrant article.
What did we say?
Well, I'm just gonna say that the other aspect of this, we've already had town meeting approval for the tennis courts.
Yeah.
So what's really happening is we're adding on the baseball field. Now,
Correct.
I have this issue, I'm presenting something and selectmen are at me like, well, what if, you know, people support this but not that, but it's combined in one thing. You may have someone that jumps up and says, I don't wanna spend money on a baseball field.
But this whole project, for us to be able to take the new field creation, pickleball courts, all of that stuff off the table for future capital requests, all depends on both of these. If we can't.
Oh, I think you can make the argument, I'm just, as a procedural thing.
I hear
I mean,
you.
I hope that
Yeah.
we've done our job and the youth sports organizations having a huge stake in this game. You know, it sounds like their constituents and everybody is, you know, very supportive of this and that they're gonna show up in order to show that support.
The small town meetings are score.
I know.
So we had soccer and baseball have been heavily included in these meetings.
That's
And
smart.
they have been, you know, everyday emails like, where are we at with this? What are we doing? So I think it's very likely that we're gonna see a very large contingency show up in support of this.
So Carolyn, what's the article number?
Or,
And
Or,
it'll be
So,
four.
If we, working sort of in the reverse order from what I said earlier, but the second thing we do tonight is to say, we as a committee support Article 4. Then town meeting will deal with all that and they'll make sure that the vote happens that way. And that's the vote that's gonna matter on that night for the articulation of all the different dollars and stuff.
Yeah. We just want to
But
say,
we need to, in our approved application for funding, might be this place where we say, with 200,000 coming from the previously earmarked funds from the, whatever it was, potpourri group, we could put that in our first vote. The application for funding.
Did others cover everything? Are we ready for?
yeah,
this?
let's, yeah, we need to move
I'll
on.
make a motion to close the previous high school tennis court project. We should take that off the table, rescind it, close it on that, which pick order. Approve 700,000 from the recreation budget, 200,000 from the water department gift recreation bucket.
It's actually, I think, the 242 King Street,
Okay,
gift.
yeah, there you go. And 118,350 also from the recreation bucket for this project.
And then, 15,650,
That gets
It's
deducted,
not our problem.
right?
that's not through CPC.
That's gonna be, that's the authorization piece for the treasurer to borrow or to be
Yeah.
used from
The 118.
the town budget.
Right, so that's not our issue.
Can we bump it up to eliminate that gap?
100.
you know what?
18,000.
I'm not,
Let's
I
not
chose to go that,
Yeah.
but I would assume that finance and the town administration have gone through that and
Right.
a reason why they chose
And-
that.
I wouldn't
And hopefully we never. get
diverge
there.
from
Yeah,
the
there's-
town warrant
And
article.
hopefully, Andrew, we're gonna, you know, at least I'm hoping that this USDA grant will come through in some form, which then that, you know, becomes a moot point.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Could you name the project that we're closing again? Or maybe with the.
The-
Littleton High School,
tennis
Littleton High
court.
School tennis courts.
That was the motion.
That was a motion.
I second.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna wait for our scribe to scribe.
So I'll move that the previous CPC project of the high school, who seconded?
I
Jeff,
did, yeah.
that this previous CPC project of the high school tennis court rehabilitation be closed, and that there was three parts to it. I didn't get the second part. And
Fund the new project with 700,000 from the recreation budget.
and that the
tennis/baseball
tennis
field
court and playing
project.
field
Yeah.
project.
Or should that, well,
What?
Like,
I
yeah,
think is it really just 800, 18,350?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
The two numbers are coming out of the rec budget, they're the same, so.
Hmm.
They're just telling us they came from different places.
Right.
Sorry,
Um,
800,
the,
$18,350 from the recreation budget.
or be approved for funding by
The 700 plus the 118,350.
CPC from which fund?
Recreation.
Recreation.
So the
And
gift.
can you articulate it?
And then-
The tennis court and playing field project
Separately.
of 10/15/2024 be approved for funding by CPC from recreation fund in what amounts?
700,000.
818,350.
Just combine it.
Oh, you're gonna combine it?
It makes it cleaner.
18,350.
Okay.
And 200 from the 242 King Street gift.
200,000.
Yep.
Even.
Yep.
From which gift?
242.
King Street.
And then I have one other thing to either add to this or as a separate motion, or we need to amend the warrant article to say that it's coming out of the recreation.
Yeah, let's do the second.
Okay,
Saul moved, Jeffrey seconded that the previous CPC project, the high school tennis court rehabilitation be closed, and that the tennis court and playing field project of 10/15/2024 be approved for funding by CPC from the recreation fund in the amount of $818,350 and $200,000 from the one of 242 King Street gift. Could I say, the 18,000?
Yes.
Just to modify that comes from our reserve.
Recreation reserve.
So I imagine they'll probably have to do like a green sheet or an orange sheet for this, right? With the
Mhm.
updated,
Yeah, because they didn't specify the.
I think what I was, well, let's finish this one.
Yeah, let's finish this.
One thing at a time.
Okay. All right, so, we had a motion by Saul, seconded by Jeff, and read by Mitt. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Yes, what I would say is let's have Carolyn ask the TA's office,
yeah, so I mean, the way that we
Either-
voted this.
either amend it, right, we've said how it's gonna be done, so either let's ask, does it need to be in the article? If it does, amend it in the green sheet. If it doesn't,
Yeah, because the way that we voted it makes perfect sense, like, boom, here you go, we're rescinding the previous one, we're approving the new project. I just want to make sure that that's reflected in
Yeah.
Right.
the actual,
so I guess I don't know if it matters whether the article itself calls out which bucket it comes from.
we can always mention that, well,
It should.
It
probably.
should.
It should.
So I think we just ask them to put it in as an amendment.
Because someone's gonna ask us and we're not. gonna-
And will you have the numbers of the amounts in the bucket? I mean, that's the corollary to
Yes,
asking about
yes,
which
we will,
bucket.
I'll talk to Michelle, make sure she can give me the updated.
Okay, so we're not gonna deal with that.
No, so we should
Yeah,
deal with
I'll do
that,
that
so I
tomorrow.
will. Hopefully the final motion on this topic to support the Article 4 as written with, or support Article 4 amended to designate the funds come from the Recreation
I second.
Reserve Fund.
I don't want to throw a wrench into it. Sorry, Sala.
Go ahead.
So the way that we voted it, we closed the article as opposed to amending it. Can we roll with that? Because technically,
No, we
No, we-
closed the old project. We didn't-
We didn't,
gotcha.
Article 4 is what's written in the warrant already. It's there and published and out, so.
No, and exactly, but I mean, like, we were amending previous projects in Article.
Yeah.
4. But technically, we're closing it and approving, I know it's semantics.
because the only thing we're doing here is saying that this will come from recreation. Because it doesn't say here recreation, just says Community Preservation Act balance, but the numbers may be a little different.
But I think we're talking about where this is all crossed out, this is
Yeah.
closed, I mean, we're,
And it says and
Maybe closing,
substitute the language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't,
I mean, we could have
Do we
just
have to
said,
do that though? I mean, because we're controlling the purse by the vote that we just made. And
Yeah.
they're gonna get the money and we determine where it came from. Article 4 doesn't have to say that, but
But they can state that, like, on the floor, that you guys did vote and that your vote specifically said where the money should come from.
And I can put that on the final slide.
Yeah.
In the supported by boards and committees, that can totally be. If you want, I can put that right into the presentation.
I'm not trying to demand anything. I just don't wanna inadvertently scuttle this.
oh, no,
Right,
absolutely, we
right.
don't want to do that, so I just want to
Right.
make sure it's.
I don't think that you will. I mean, you're just adding that clarification piece to it. That's all.
So do we need Saul's motion?
So what I'm worried about though is our motion was to close it, this is to amend it in the article language. You kind of get what I'm saying, like,
Yeah,
But can we just sever the, like, what's been suggested, sever the bucket, go from this whole thing? Just, I mean, as more of a clarification, does it have to be included in Article 4?
maybe not.
yeah, so what we were doing was not really for the article, it was for PPC, this is how we want to do it. And then we're saying, okay, then with the article.
I guess the question is, I mean, I think we need to vote to support the article.
Yeah.
If we do,
Well,
then.
haven't we
need to put
already
it-
voted to support the article? I mean,
We voted to put it in the project.
But
The
if,
article.
say the article hadn't been written yet, we would have
Right.
approved the project.
Right,
And then, you know, weeks later, they would have come back and we wouldn't support the article. So
Right.
now we're just doing it like all at once.
Right.
But we are kind of dividing it into the two votes. So we're approving the project and then we're supporting the article.
the only
Yeah.
question is, do we want to amend the article? And I'm fine if we don't.
I guess I'm fine if we don't. I don't want to cause any trouble at town meeting by trying to amend it.
I mean, if the question occurs, what is your intention? Where is this money? What CPC funds are gonna be used? We can say it's our intention to use recreation.
I mean, we did vote on that, so we do have it
We have
in
our
our minutes.
We have our vote. We won't have, yeah, all right, whatever.
All right, I'll revise my motion to say, I move we vote to support Article 4 as published in the town warrant.
A second, that's.
Like I said, I can go through and clarify that
Yeah.
that is the recreation
Sure.
bucket in my presentation.
That's making so much sense to me now. Thank you.
Mm,
I agree. So my vote still stands. Are we still unanimous on that?
We haven't voted on that yet.
We have to vote on it.
Somebody has to second it.
I
seconded
seconded it.
Wait, is this the second motion by you, Saul?
Yes,
I don't understand how this one's different than the other one.
because the first one, we wanted to amend the article. Now we're saying we won't amend the article.
Before we vote, I have issues with the previous vote that we made, and I just deleted something from the minutes. Because I thought your second motion was to say you would have done the first motion differently.
No, undo.
And maybe I'm just coming to this a little late, but I'm understanding that it already says amend Article 10, something that we previously did business on, and we just undid the business that they're referring to there. I have problems with that.
that's the, yeah, that's,
I agree, but we at this late date, we can't really,
No, we support Article 4 as the second thing we do tonight. I'm repeating my earlier thing. And we just simply say we approve the project for funding at this dollar amount. And we don't undo any past business.
So in the first vote, we shouldn't have rescinded, we should just have approved the project.
Seems straightforward.
I mean, honestly, from just 10,000 feet. The old project was the old project, so whether you say that, that was previously supported and we realized that, hey, this is changing, so whether you close the old projects or not, you're not closing the old article, you're just saying the old project doesn't exist anymore, we're approving a new project, or we're approving a updated project, whatever that might be, because the article is the article. You're still amending Article 10, whether that's striking it out is saying that you're closing the old project and approving a new project. That's essentially what's happening here.
Yeah, it's just a shame that it was worded this way and.
I agree. I'm just trying to
Otherwise, it
see
would
if
just.
that-
Again, yeah.
So do we wanna strike that vote and start over?
Oh, no.
I don't.
why can't we rescind it?
I think we're overthinking things.
I think
Yeah,
we're
it's
thinking,
totally
why can't we
sorry.
just leave it that it was rescinded, that we voted to close it like we did? Is that a problem?
So if we vote to close it though, then we're going to town meeting saying we're revising it. So we can't revise something that's rescinded. Does that make any sense?
Oh,
Or am I
No,
talking?
I just said it was done.
I see what you're
That was
saying,
my
kind
point.
of. I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Andrew, my point is that the project was finished,
It closed.
done.
Done,
So-
absolutely. It's done, new project approved, going
Yeah.
forward. Yeah.
So,
But we have to, because that money's coming back to CPC.
Well, that's the thing.
And allocated to a
Right.
project.
but it
on
never
paper.
went away. from
On
the
paper.
yeah.
All right, so in our minutes, we can rescind it, but we don't have to do anything about we can just approve the article, yes?
But
I think, I mean, so at the base of all this is sort of like dealing with this money in a proper way. There is no way that someone can put their hand out and get that $700,000 that we previously approved. So I don't know. I think we are overthinking it. I mean, just support the article on.
Right.
My interpretation was that the first vote that you all took was clarifying that you wanted those funds to specifically come out of that recreation fund. And then I would say Saul's second motion of supporting the article then just kind of ties up.
I mean, we could say that we're allocating $700,000 for this project that was and refer to the one that we, and just say as, what's the word, superseding the previous project from the May town meeting or whatever.
And so I love the motion. I mean, perfect sense, boom, done, approved, the new project. I'm just worried that that'll conflict with what's in here now.
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does either, I think.
Okay, assuming that we're overthinking. There are, in minutes, a second motion, Saul moved, Jeffrey seconded, thank
I
you.
think, I thought.
Linda.
Linda.
Seconded, yeah.
That the committee support special town meeting Article 4. Is that what you said?
Want to take a vote?
Because in that first vote, we didn't mention Article 4.
We didn't.
Right. True.
So this is no.
Committee members, I will yield here.
We got a motion in a second, let's.
Yeah, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay.
So the brand trust really should have.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
probably, either the TA's office or the town council, whoever came up with this should have been here
Yes.
to help us along, but
Yes.
well,
But such a.
We made suggestions.
We're done.
Sorry for the long meeting, guys.
I get a text right now, Littleton Youth, soccer and baseball would like to say thank you. And we already have thank you as well for helping us.
All right,
Sorry for the late in the game changes here.
okay,
We appreciate it, and then it'll do a lot of good for the entire town, so thank you.
all right.
Play ball. I like it.
Play ball.
What's the rally cry for tennis?
Okay.
Quiet, please.
Yeah, that's a good one for that. Just don't forget your flash drive, your flash drive.
Thank you.
Lake people, sorry, this is, been a little.
We just torture you all.
Yeah, I don't know if you've stayed, so I'm gonna guess that you still want to, talk. We have, actually, I was approached by resident Rob Rounce, to have this on the agenda to kind of start some talks about, lake, funding. And we have members of the Clean Lakes Committee here as well, and Mitt Wanzer, who will return shortly, is also a member of Clean Lakes, just, full disclosure. So, Rob, do you want to, are you the one who's going to speak to?
Well, I can speak to why I requested the agenda item. I do want to say that I very much appreciate not only your welcoming me tonight, but I know I've been here before speaking with you and you've extended those courtesies in the past. And then I've also attended some of your previous meetings in which I've, witnessed some of your members having discussion about the need for lakes funding in light of the cell tower, transition of a couple of years ago. And so I appreciate what I see as a very conservative and diligent effort to come to terms with regard to the need for new funding sources. In that regard, Carolyn, I'll throw out to you that you were the second person to, in your discussion, state, I think we need a stakeholder meeting, and that actually prompted me to pursue Jim Duggan with regard to convening what then was, held, and many of you attended a meeting in August, initiated by Jim, discussed aspects of the need for funding of the water treatments since the previous funding didn't happen. So in that regard, I'll just say, and I heard Mitt in essence give reference to, I think, where I find myself as a resident. I'm not a member of Clean Lakes Committee, I'm not a member of any town organization, but I am someone who has taken a keen interest with regard to following the bouncing ball and trying to provide for the water treatments to protect Littleton's lakes. In that regard, I'm here tonight for nothing of the magnitude that you've just discussed. In fact, I informally put a dollar value that's less than $10,000 along with the project. That is it safe to assume you distributed what I sent one Monday to everyone?
Yes, what was that?
With the pictures of
The diver assisted.
I put it on a PowerPoint and I can't get the PowerPoint up.
So as you're doing that, in order to move it along, I'll
Yeah,
just
just
say,
keep going.
it's referred to as DASH, diver assisted suction harvesting.
yeah.
It's not been previously used in Littleton, but it has been used in other parts of, with regard to ponds and lakes. It's something which involves a sequence operation that literally goes in and pulls up the roots such that the plant isn't just trimmed and potentially spliced off and regenerating elsewhere, rather it is plucked and removed. And in that regard, I've shown you a photo that shows the current condition of the Long Lake Beach area, particularly the swim box area. And it's that I think there's potentially a great alignment should Clean Lakes, who has the responsibility to identify what necessary water treatments are needed to preserve and maintain our lakes, as there are them to be aligned with Park and Rec that has in its mission to, provide for outdoor recreation activities. I believe, and wanted to just bring up briefly as I'm almost concluding on this remark, the aspect that I think somewhat like Mitt was saying, a resident could come and say, hey, I think there might be a recreation project or a recreation eligible project for you to consider. And this is one that I think would be a great improvement with regard to somewhat minimal funds needed in order to clean up that swim box area that often I hear people, quite frankly, hesitant to go in because 2 feet off of the shoreline, they're confronted with weeds that, are in their ankles and it just proceeds out to the dock.
Can I
So-
bring up something that we have discussed before? Is this considered maintenance and we can't cover maintenance?
It could technically be put as open space preservation because you're preserving the natural environments. Invasive species do pose a threat to ecosystems and other plant life. So in a way, like we've done in the past, we have argued that that is open space preservation with the last couple of projects that went through town meeting.
Like which projects?
The island removal at Long Lake.
Oh, right. that did
invasive-
go through. Yeah,
We've done aquatic invasives in the past, as well, so it would technically be considered, preservation of open space. The same thing on land, we've done land invasive plant control,
mhm.
and that's considered a open space preservation project. So, yeah, so it's
Okay. It's gonna be a
Can
precedent.
I add to that?
absolutely,
I did some research on the CP, on the Community Preservation Coalition resource database of projects, and there's ones dating back to 2017 for invasive species in Northampton, dredging of a pond in Plymouth, Wellesley, Tisbury, Northampton, and other towns have all done projects.
Right,
And most of them are categorized as open space. They say that pretty clearly, open space.
so it wouldn't be recreation, it would be open space.
And hopefully it's not a maintenance, it's a improve it and improve the overall conditions and then as opposed to come back immediately. Eliminate.
Okay, that's great.
Yes, I think this was the,
I'll conclude just by saying that I'll absorb what the discussion that you just had. I find myself as a resident believing that the whole cell tower has placed us in a new day in Littleton with regard to how I'm going to approach BRCE and the Park and Rec Commission and potentially even CPC, certainly CLC, with regard to expanding the concept that I believe exists in the Park and Rec Commission mission with regard to providing outdoor recreation. I believe outdoor recreation can extend instead of just being land-based to our water bodies. And yet I do not want to make my statement lead to any extensive discussion among you tonight. I just want to say that that's a position that I find myself increasingly, trying to, consider because I think the town of Littleton residents have been able to somewhat not consider their water bodies because of the existence of CLC and the cell tower funding that in effect didn't require town votes and it was just kind of out of sight, so to speak. And it's not that way anymore. So with that, unless you have questions specific to what Carolyn distributed to you, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, just to bring it up. I hope to convey this request to Clean Lakes Committee. They meet tomorrow. I hope that they will support dash treatment for this swim box area and as they go about their establishment of the fiscal year, the next fiscal year budget. Thank you for your time.
so John, as, but you're still chair, I assume, Clean
Yeah.
Lakes. Is this something that was on your radar also, or do you have, are you formulating? all these
Well,
projects, or-
all of our budget is kind of in flux right now because of our funding situation, but this is one of the areas we were going to bring to you. We talked it around the past few months. And in regard to Long Lake and also other lakes that might profit buck from this process. Kind of labor intensive and as a result, more expensive than typical. But it also promises to literally remove the plants, so they wouldn't be back, just growing again. The ongoing problems with lakes, of course, contends with somebody going in and cutting down, whatever nuisance plants are underwater. And they almost come back stronger, or denser. And so this seems like it would be something that would be more of a long-term solution. And so we're talking things around, very conscious of the idea that, that this committee does not support maintenance. We would like to present lakes and streams in Littleton as projects in themselves, as entities that really we need to care for. Mill Pond, of course, is one of our prime examples of what can happen, if things are neglected for such a long time, and really, forces beyond anyone's control, have kind of ruined Mill Pond, for what it could have been. And it continues to be polluted today. So it really derailed our restoration project, but understandably so, I think, at this point. So yeah, it's an ongoing concern, has been for 25 years. It will continue to be a concern, and we're happy to share our concerns with you.
And you had said that you fully expect to come to us with some projects for the
For the
May.
next couple of years, I think that's the primary directive that we are getting. I'm hoping for some designated funds through the select board, but again, knowing their finances at this point, I don't expect too much too soon. So again, we appreciate at least being heard, and realize that we're breaking new ground here to a certain extent. And well, appreciate your ear.
And Park and Rec, do you have anything in your budgets for water cleanliness? Is that?
We don't, and we've had a few conversations with Rob in the past too. I think, you know, Long Lake itself is under the beach anyways, under the care and custody of Park and Rec. And I think, you know, that makes sense to try to figure out ways that we can help with Long Lake. We're not really involved with any of the other lakes, so I don't know if those make sense. But we've tried to come up with some ideas of potentially how we could make money. One of the challenges that we have is, and you know, I've had this conversation with Rob, is we're not like Light and Water, right? And, you know, we're not, it's not an absolute, I mean, I think we would disagree.
It's not a
But it's
necessity.
not a necessity for someone to sign up for the recreation programs. So when we do our budgeting, you know, we're going off of what we think we're going to make for the year. There's no guarantee that we're gonna make that amount. So for us to say like, sure, we can, you know, save up X amount and try to, you know, turn that over. We're not sure if we're allowed to do that yet. That's something that's gotta be verified by the town solicitor. If we are allowed to do that, it's hard to say we can give you X amount of money because we don't know what we're gonna take in.
Right.
So
I think, you know, we've had very high level discussions and,
Yeah.
you know, are there things that we could add to the user fees to maybe help
yeah,
with some of this? You know, obviously the answer is yes, we can look into what we are able to do. You know, and not that this is something, but could we add an additional fee to the beach pass that money goes, right? You know, when the state turned the boat ramp over to us, just like other boat ramps, like when you go down the Cape, you pay for the boat ramp, it's $20 to do it. We, as the park commission, they have the power to decide if that became from free to a charging, and that fee could be something that's based on cleaning up the lakes. There are opportunities out there that are not the money that's brought in by PRC programming and out of the revolving fund that Clean Lakes and Park Commission and everybody else can talk about. That, you know, obviously it's good for us. We want to keep the lake clean. We want that area to be swimmable. We want the sailboats to be able to go out on the water and not get caught. We want the paddlers to go out and the fishermen to go out and not have issues losing tackle and fishing line and everything else. So, you know, the larger conversation, I don't think is where can it come out of the recreation bucket, but what are opportunities for us to generate revenue that's specifically earmarked to go to that?
Yeah.
You know, the bigger piece that I would say is, you know, we do have a lot of people who just come to the beach, especially after hours, so they don't want to buy a beach pass. My, you know, thing would be to encourage those people to buy a beach pass to help some of this stuff actually be able to happen. You know, a lot of the monies that we bring in, the beach doesn't make a lot of money. We lost money last year. We were about $72,000 in the negative based on the projects that we did. This year, we're gonna be in the negative again. We installed a $25,000 pathway, $30,000 pathway, that, you know, wasn't funded by the town. We didn't do a CPC request. We didn't budget for it, but it was something that was brought to the town administrator's office and we were asked to execute. So those are the kind of things that, you know, we do cover from time to time, and we are big proponents of helping where and every single time that we can, but we do need help from especially the surrounding community and the users of, you know, that area, and the users that, you know, don't purchase passes, to understand that these are some of the things that we're trying to generate for good in order to put money towards. You know, this year conservation wasn't able to do it, so, you know, we found $2,000 to get a dumpster for the invasive species pool that came out of the rec budget.
Yeah.
So there are all of these projects that we're currently, you know, hey, can you help? Can you help? Can you help? Yes, but eventually we just can't tolerate that because it's an unknown.
For sure.
It's a shame we couldn't have funded that walkway for you guys, because that would have been a perfect project. I mean.
And that was something that just,
Well, in a roundabout way, we saved that money and you did tonight, so.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that these lake projects could come under recreation, you know, based on what you were saying. I mean,
Technically though, when it comes to like the health of the lake though, I don't know how that would fit under the recreation side
Yeah.
of things. That's where it gets a little dicey.
because it's more like invasive species and yeah.
But
conservation.
but his point, I think, was that in order for people to be able to use the lakes, you have to deal with these invasive species. Otherwise, people won't be able to
Are
use
they-
the lakes.
Is the growth in the swim area invasive? No.
It's more of a.
But there are nuisance plants.
Okay.
You know, we hear that annually with the Appleman track one. You know, you go out swimming and there's some shallow areas along that path.
Okay.
And they go, ah!
The main issue that we have in the swim box, it's kind of like this, if you took a bunch of those Halloween spider webs and dyed them green, and it's just this big gelatinous kind of mass. It's very carpety kind of feeling. It's what you see washed up on the beach that the lifeguards are raking up every morning, that kind of black.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what it, I mean, I'm very familiar with it, I just didn't know what it actually
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Not invasive.
Mr. Barr?
What a nuisance.
Hi, Dave Barr, I'm also a member of the Finance Committee. So, yeah, a lot of the plant growth in the lakes right now is invasive plants, not all of it, right? But, I think the biggest concern we have is that, to preserve the lakes normally have a cycle where what they call eutrophy, right? Where they eventually slowly fill in with plants and growth, and, you know, they turn from lakes to ponds to marshes to, you know,
Wetlands.
wetland, yeah. But naturally, that takes like 10,000 years. And when you start to have development of towns and houses and farms around the lakes, that time can go from 10,000 years to 100 years, or in the case of Mill Pond, 20 years, right? And so the plant growth in the lakes is what we're really concerned about, the eutrophication of the lakes in order to keep them as vital, vibrant resources that, you know, people can, you know, use, appreciate, view, and whether most of the plants that are coming in and growing like that are invasives, but they're not all invasives. And, you know, the goal of fighting eutrophication, accelerated eutrophication, is kind of independent of what type of plant it is.
Okay, so it's, yeah, I guess that was the question really is there's plants there. There's not a health objection to removing them, or a lake health objection to removing them.
No, but again, that comes back into the sort of, the use, it's recreation. And, you don't see how that kind of aligns with your funding. It is recreation related, and, people oftentimes, who canoe on a lake or sail about or whatever, have grasses and things that are there removed. Lily pad sections are wiped out and stuff, just so they can get their boats in and around. We used to have power boats on Long Lake, that would tow skiers. And they always contended that kept the growth down, because they're chopping things up, and spread it around as well, and then it's regenerated, so, two-edged sword. That doesn't happen any longer, but they do require constant care.
It does kind of bring up an interesting point, though. If it's not necessarily invasive plants control, how would we determine if it's preserving open space and as opposed to maintaining an open, nice area essentially for people?
Semantics.
Semantics, like I should every time.
Yeah.
Just the amount of biomass in the lake is a problem.
That is the problem, and the invasive plants and the nuisance plants are actually a byproduct of this whole process, which, as Dave mentioned, is accelerated because we live around our lakes.
Yeah.
And we take everything and dump it into the lowest point, which of course is the lake. And we have, it has been said in Long Lake, there's probably 8 or 10 feet of accumulated sediment, and dead plant material, which is why we get the floating islands from time to time, and things are deteriorating, and it's the nutrient load just accelerates. It's like fertilizer, just accelerates the growth of things. And so it's not normal. It's not balanced the way it should be, because we throw it out of balance.
So I just like to bring that back to why I began asking for the time you provided with regard to Dash, because I think we can put our arms around that conceptually and really understand the connection to a recreational use because of the beach operation. And I look forward to working with Park and Rec Commission and PRCE and ultimately you folks in Clean Lakes with regard to what I think is a emerging sort of connection. But I don't think I know I'm not prepared to make a definitive argument to try to present to you as accept this is the argument, but rather I think we've touched on a number of the points that I really think go to aspects of, so what are these lakes, these treasures, and how are they utilized? And I argue that the biomass is an inhibitor with regard to utilizing it for recreational purposes, because in some cases the biomass is so overwhelming that it prevents, enjoyment of those recreational pursuits. So thank you.
Yeah. So I would just say, I think we're all kind of in favor of this, and we've talked about this before. So just reminding you of timelines. The warrants usually close mid-March. So the latest we'd want to see something, the latest would be our February meeting. We meet the third Wednesday. If you could come to us in January, at least with eligibility, so that we can talk about it and revise and ask questions, that would be best.
We're
And
hoping to be actually a couple of months ahead of that, but,
Okay, even better.
It's our
Better.
first time through with other lakes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in your favor to get in early,
Yes,
and
early
you're,
as you can.
since you're competing against other,
Without a doubt,
yeah.
well aware of that.
but it is October, so don't forget it goes fast.
Sure it does.
Say it's only
All sorts of
51 meetings, yeah.
distractions, but
Yeah. So yeah, just keep in touch, and I think we'll be able to help.
Thank you.
And the process is we come 1 month for eligibility and the next month requesting funding.
We would prefer that, I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. I mean, we saw tonight, we voted both eligibility and especially if we've been talking to you but we would prefer to be able to talk about the project, ask some questions, you know, even if you had a draft of a project so that we could, you know, make some changes, make some tweaks to it and then come back for the final vote. That's the preferred way, but we also acknowledge that it doesn't always work that way.
Thank you.
Because I listened to your discussion with regard to the buckets in previous meetings, I've heard that if that could be provided, I'd be interested before your next meeting. I'd hate to lose a month just to understand what
What's left.
are the existing balances. If that could be provided offline, I think would be helpful in order to, you know, communicate with others who are considering applications. I think it would be helpful.
Do that. Okay. Any further questions for the? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, for sitting through our long meeting.
It's almost a record for us.
I know. We just had a couple of, the code of conduct will skip. I did want to approve those minutes though, from our last meeting. It's August. Everybody got those?
August
Yeah,
21st.
What?
August 21st?
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I know, one minor, sorry, I'm throwing a lot of wrenches today.
Yeah.
So, mid under Fog Pond, the project was the path to dredging in invasive plant control. I think you had dredging in the path.
Yeah, invasive control.
I've got that document open, where we are in the process.
I'll work with Andrew to, you gave it to me, so I'll work with him.
That works.
Do you want to make a motion with that amendment?
I'll make a motion to approve the August 21st meeting minutes as amended with said edits.
Seconded.
We have a motion by Andrew, a second by Linda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's key.
We have the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah, seconded.
All in
Oh,
favor?
you have.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, thank you. Thank you for all our participants.